We are going to make the most delicious carb-loaded meal you have ever tasted. Except what? It hardly has any carbs. So stick around because we're about to dive into some guiltless indulgence. Okay, so I am a carb lover through and through. Give me salty over sweet any day of the week. In fact, I could literally live on bread and butter alone, but even the Bible says man cannot live on bread alone, so I gotta be all grown up and eat a well-balanced, sensible diet. But this meal is no sacrifice. Nothing I eat is a sacrifice because one of my favorite hobbies is eating. So if I'm gonna eat, it's gonna be good. And this one is top of the list. Okay, so it's a layering meal. So you start with, I'm gonna start with spaghetti squash, which is like replacing pasta. And it's only about 7 grams of carbs per cup. And then it's got a lot of fiber in it, so that kind of balances out. I mean, spaghetti squash is allowed on a keto diet, so you know it's low in carbs. And then the next layer is kind of a you do you layer. You can put your favorite spaghetti sauce, or you could do like I'm gonna show you today. I'm going to do some caramelized onions and sauteed mushrooms, and then we top it all off with an almond ricotta that is chef's kiss. It is delicious beyond words. Yes, I learned how to do it when I was vegan, but I have never let this go because you'll never taste a more delicious ricotta than this one. So let's get started with cutting our spaghetti squash. Make sure your knife is sharp because this little baby, that skin is hard to cut through. So you want to get the rounds to be about a ½ inch, as thin as you can get them. Let's get these cut up. So this is about the size you want to get it. Going in with a point seems to be a good little trick. So once you get in there, you can slice it pretty easily. Sometimes it's just breaking the skin the first time. Just be very careful not to cut your fingers with that freshly sharpened knife. Now what you want to do is just go in with a little paring knife and just slice out the seeds that are in the middle there. I don't use these ones, I just throw those end pieces out. And so we're gonna roast them on a baking sheet. So as I get them prepared, I'll just throw them over there. So I lined the cookie sheets with foil, and now I'm just going to drizzle some olive oil around. And as you know, this is what makes it delicious. And then each one gets some pepper and everyone gets some salt. So I have them all set and ready to go in the oven. I have the oven preset for 450. We're gonna put them in for about 10 minutes. You wanna keep an eye on them. As soon as you can take a fork and kind of peel them away is when I feel that they're done. It's like pasta. It's how you like it to be done. I like it to have a little crunch. I don't like when it gets mushy. So I'm gonna do it for 10 minutes, then I'm gonna flip them over. I'll check and see, how they're cooking, how much longer, maybe just another 5 minutes. At the most, I would say 20 minutes and they're done, but sometimes it's less. So I keep an eye on it because I don't like it to go to that mushy stage. So now that we have the spaghetti squash in the oven, this is a good time to do our caramelized onions. So you want a good amount of onions because once they get caramelized, they really reduce in size a lot. And now let's move them into the saucepan. So to the saucepan, I'm gonna put it to about medium high. I'm gonna add some olive oil and then just throw them in there. And you want to make sure your saucepan is big enough. You don't want them too crowded. This is as big of a saucepan that I have, so it's going to have to do. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt, which is going to help pull out the moisture that's in them. So here's the stages that it's going to go through. It's going to start, they're going to start getting soft, and then they're going to start getting juicy, and then we just want to get that reduced. And then we just have to let the onions do their thing. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. Don't rush the process. It's worth every single minute of effort you put into it. So 10 minutes has passed, and we're going to give them a little check. I decided to put them all on one cookie sheet. So, oh yeah, they're already starting to, just after 10 minutes. So I'm gonna flip them and I'm gonna check them again in 5 minutes. So how I check it is I kind of just wiggle my fork in and then pull it towards the middle. And when it starts to just kind of turning into these little strands, then you know that. I'm just going to put it in for another couple of minutes just so that I can get it kind of roasted on the other side, because I love that roasty, toasty taste that comes with that. Back to our onions. The smell of roasted onions reminds me of my grandmother's house. My mother never did this, but my grandmother would often caramelize onions, and then she would put them on like hamburgers and stuff. And that was like a big treat to have a hamburger. We didn't have that at our house. We were 5 kids and we did whatever my mother had time to do, and individual hamburgers was not part of her repertoire. A lot of casseroles. Meat and potato. Campbell's soup made every meal more delicious. Okay, so you can see it's starting to get a little brown. They are definitely getting to a spot that looks really good. Okay, so let's move over and do our mushrooms. So I have the burner turned on to about a medium high, the same as with the onions. I got lazy and I got them already chopped up, and I put it in a hot, dry pan. Okay, Alexa told me that 5 minutes is up. So let me pull these little fellas out. Oh yeah, they're perfect. So you just I would let them cool, and then you can do this after. So our mushrooms, what they're gonna do, because they have a lot of liquid in them, so we're just gonna try and get that liquid out. Okay, let's move over and see how our onions are doing. Okay, the onions are looking great. And you can add water. I think I'm kind of okay at this point. But I'll tell you what, it sure is smelling like Granny's house right now. Our mushrooms are looking really good too. So now that we have the mushrooms right where we want them, nice and dry, I'm going to add some butter. I'm going to add some olive oil. And here is where you can add whatever spices you want to add. You can add some soy sauce. I'm going to put coconut Amigos because I just find soy sauce is so bad for you. You could add oyster sauce, any spices that call your name, and then, oh, you can just tell by looking. You don't need to smell that, right? You know that's gonna be good. The onions are coming along nicely. I think I'm actually gonna add a little bit of water. If there's anything on the bottom, can you hear that sizzle? So if there's any of that yumminess on the bottom, that'll just bring it right up and get it into the onions. And you can see it's already starting to look really delicious. And that caramelization is just going to bring the sweetness of the onions out. So our mushrooms are right where we want them, so I'm just going to take them off the burner and set them aside for when we're going to start assembling our little, I don't even have a name for this. Right, let's put that on the back. I think our onions are looking pretty good. And we can probably put those on the back burner. So anytime you're doing a recipe that calls for nuts that need to go in the food processor, they're gonna tell you to soak them in water for either 12 hours or overnight, which is fine, that works. But the problem for me was I would always forget if I didn't plan ahead to soak those nuts, and I just wouldn't make the recipe. I finally figured out that if you put those nuts in boiling water an hour, you're good to go. So I have 2 cups of almonds that I have had sitting here soaking in boiling water, and now I'm just going to drain them, rinse them, and throw them in the food processor. Okay, so here we are. We have the food processor. We have our 2 cups of almonds that have been soaking in boiling water for about an hour. And I'm just gonna dump that right in there. And in here, all you're gonna add is 3 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. If that's something you're not familiar with, it's really something I learned while I was a vegan. But it's very easy to find. The grocery stores have it. And then this again, you just sort of do what is right for you. I do a teaspoon and a half of salt. And then I add in 3 cloves of garlic. But you know, if you want to put 5 or 6 cloves in, I'm not telling on you. You do whatever makes you happy. So I'm gonna chop that up, throw it in, and we'll start blending everything. So in goes the garlic and 1 cup of water. And I'm gonna turn this on. You want it to be creamy, but still to have, you know, not to be 100% smooth. So let's do that. Okay, so I forgot about it. And it's been in there about 4 minutes, so let's see. I also added a little more water because it seemed like it was not blending up the way it should. So, you know, just check it, and if you think it needs a little extra water, you could do that. Okay, so this is perfect. This is what you want it to look like. Just kind of clumpy oatmeal-y. Now I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice in there. Okay, so we squeezed the lemon juice. Let's see if 1 lemon gave me 2 tablespoons, and it did. And then the next thing we do is we put in 1/4 cup of sliced basil. So this part is really fun for me. There's something very satisfying about watching those spaghetti strands coming off, and then I just dump them into my bowl, and that is what they look like. And if you think that it looks good, you're right. It not only looks good, it not only tastes good, it tastes amazing. And I did wash the spaghetti squash before I started cutting it. I gave it actually a good scrubbing. And we will just continue on with every one. So now comes the fun part. We're going to assemble it all. Well, it's all the fun part, right? You can see you get a lot of spaghetti squash, and so you can probably use it in different recipes. It's just me and my husband tonight, so I'm just gonna, I like to make them in these little ramekins, so we each have our own little portion. All right, so we start by putting a little bit of this in there. Okay, now is that you do you level layer. So for me, I'm gonna put some mushrooms, and I'm gonna put some of the caramelized onions. Last night I made a meat sauce. For my husband, I'm going to add the meat sauce as a layer. And I'm also gonna put in some of the caramelized onions and the mushrooms because I think he would enjoy that. Those onions are gonna be so good. And some mushrooms. And for me, I'm going to put the onions and the mushrooms. And now we top it off with the almond ricotta. And this lasts, because it makes a big amount. And so you can leave it in the fridge for like 5 days, I think. It'll be fine, a week maybe. And then if you're not vegan and you can tolerate dairy, which I can, you can sprinkle on maybe Parmesan cheese or something, but I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so I'm gonna put them on a baking sheet. I have the oven at 350. I'm gonna stick them in for about 20 minutes. It's really just to heat everything through. So here it is, it's out of the oven. I had it in there for about 20 minutes and it's looking really, really good. And I cannot wait to dig into it. So if it seems like a lot to do all at once, you could do it in layers. Like one day you do the spaghetti squash and then make a meal out of that. And you saw how much there is. There's plenty left over. So, or you could do the almond ricotta because that makes a lot and it lasts for like a week in the fridge. So let me try this. Oh yeah, and make like a nice little salad with it. That might be good. My husband always teases me that when I'm eating my food, I make so many comments about how delicious it is. I love my food. Thanks for hanging out with me. Cooking can be lonely, but when you guys hang out with me, time just flies. Bye.